So why do so many people stay in Hawaii even though it's really hard to make ends meet? And of course the reason varies from person to person, but I thought I'd just share the reason why I stay in Hawaii. And it really all comes down to family. And I think that this is an important conversation to have, like, why do you stay in Hawaii? Why should anyone stay in Hawaii, even though it's really hard? And it's a conversation that many locals are currently having or will be having in the very near future. And those thoughts creep in my mind too, like maybe I should move to Las Vegas or California or Oregon or Washington or even Colorado. And I see the posts on social media where people are moving into their huge mansions that cost like $300,000 and they get to go on all these wonderful trips and experiences where bread costs less than $5. But despite how tough it is to make it in Hawaii, many locals, including myself and my family, continue to hang in there. And it's tough, it really is tough, but we still manage somehow. And for us, it hasn't gotten to the point yet where we're kind of like pushed to the edge. So I want to share this conversation on why I stick it out here. And I hope that it's relatable to some people and it's not just me. Let me know in the comments below. As wonderful as everything is here in Hawaii, the beaches, the beauty, all of that, it really comes down to just family. An interesting thing happened to me, and maybe you can relate. For the longest time, my parents just seemed to be 45 years old. As the years went on, they were in this constant state of being perpetually 45. I was getting older, but how I viewed them in my mind was just always they're 45 years old. And this is how things were for me for a while. Like I'd come back from the mainland to visit and there they were, 45 years old, and life would go on. But I distinctly remember there was just one time when I came back and they weren't 45 anymore. And they didn't even age like from 45 to 46. It's like they aged from 45 to 60. And I thought to myself, what is going on? And for the first time, I didn't see them like their child anymore. I saw them kind of like an older adult. Like, you know, they had more gray hair, they had more wrinkles, they moved a little slower. And I was shocked. It was like something inside of me changed and I just wanted to spend time with them. Like I wanted to go back to Hawaii and take care of them. I want to be here. Now my parents are fine, they're doing good and they're very active. But I remember at the time, I just had this big fear of like missing them or this fear that I could lose them and so I should try to spend as much time as I could with them. And now that I'm back and it's been over 9 years, I'm really glad that I got to spend so much time with them and continue to spend time with them. And maybe it's different for you, like your family drives you crazy and you just want to get as far away from them as you possibly could. But for me, and I think a lot of other locals, we grow up with a very close family and we just want to spend time together. Both of my parents worked very hard and they always made sure to provide what we needed. Not everything that we wanted, but everything that we needed. And really it was only until I became a parent that I kind of understood the sacrifices that they had to make for us, since I'm making a lot of those similar sacrifices for my son. And I noticed that the relationship that I have with my parents has changed over the years. It's always gonna be parent to child, but as I've gotten older, I think it's sort of changed into something better because it's almost like a peer-to-peer relationship. I know it's kind of strange, but I'll try to explain. Like they're always gonna be my parents and I'm always gonna be their son. But I noticed that, especially after I had my own son, they talk to me like I'm like one of them. I guess like I'm in the club of having actual children. And the conversations that we have are great. We talk about our interests and life and all these different things, and I really appreciate that. It's like a grown-up conversation and I get to do it with my parents. And the reasons I think that we have this type of relationship now is two things. I think the first is they raised me and my brother to take care of ourselves, and so we weren't necessarily a burden on them. I mean, I did live with them for a little bit, but they really raised us so that we could take care of ourselves independently, like on the mainland or even here locally. And the second thing is they always created a really safe space at home, that no matter how bad things got outside, we can always come home, and we knew that. And so we get to go over and we get to visit, and I like it. I like family time. It is one of the things that fills my tank in all the craziness that's here. And if I were on the mainland, I wouldn't get an opportunity to do that. And I know it's been a tough year and a half for everyone, and one of the hardest things for me was not really being able to go and see my parents a lot. And I know a lot of families were the same way. They couldn't really visit or spend time, and I'm hoping that as things start to change, we can start to spend more time together as a family. And then there's my brother, who to me is one of the most reliable people that I know, right? And he was the best man at my wedding. And I remember growing up, like, we weren't always that close. I mean, we would fight like normal brothers, but my dad would always say, like, don't fight, and you guys should be friends, because when mom and I are gone, it's just gonna be the two of you. And you know what? My dad was right. And we really grew closer when I left for college. We would talk and we'd play video games and computer games, and that's kind of how our friendship kind of grew beyond just being brothers. But he's really been a great support for me as I kind of grew up and learned new things. He's like this handyman and like tech person, you know, like I had this issue with my kitchen faucet, and for the longest time it would like leak. And so I bought all the parts, but then I couldn't like unscrew it, and so I asked him for help, and he was able to do it in like 30 seconds. And then there was a time where I had to fix my kitchen cabinet, and the hinge wouldn't like budge into the door. There's a whole other story about how this took like over a year to fix. One of our kitchen cabinets was just wide open the whole time. But I asked him for help, and he came down and he helped me, and he was just able to do it. Like, he's really just like handy in all these types of things in a lot of ways that I'm not. And if I were to move to the mainland, who would help me with these things? Now, of course, my brother is not just there to help me with home projects and things, but it is nice to have that. Someone that you can count on and rely on in short notice, who will drop what they're doing to help you. Because one of the things I realize is how much you can count on family in the long term. And friendships are important, and I've found that I've gone through these different seasons of friends. Like, you have friends in school, right? And then you move school, and then maybe you make some new friends, or you go away and then you change friends, and you change jobs, and then you change friends. And that's just kind of how it goes. It's very transient oftentimes. But when it comes to family, that doesn't change, or at least it shouldn't change, right? And they're always gonna be there. And my brother, and how important he is to me, hasn't changed. It's like when times get really, really hard, like when you need help for real, that's when you call family. I mean, friends are great to call on during daytime hours, or maybe when it's convenient, but when it's inconvenient, that's when you call family. And I wouldn't have that if I was away on the mainland. And I do also want to talk about extended family, because as you know, in Hawaii, family, your ohana, is more than just the people that are in your immediate family. It extends to aunties, uncles, cousins, and of course, Hanai family. I think like a lot of other people who grew up here, I grew up with my cousins, my grandparents, and we all were very close. We would go to my grandma's house almost every weekend and have like family dinners, and that helped to lay the foundation for a big, close, extended family where we knew each other, where we just didn't see each other like a couple times a year, like we would see each other all the time. And I was very blessed to have my grandparents in my life, my grandparents, and they're not here anymore, but they really played a big role in my life, and I think grandparents play a big role in a lot of people's lives here. And they were able to watch us, you know, during summer breaks or winter breaks, but a lot of it was just spending time together. But just having that closeness with your grandparents, I think, is so important. And if we were on the mainland, my son wouldn't have that access to that. You know, my wife's parents are already outside of the country in Japan, and so he's not really gonna get to know them as well as the family that's here. But if we were even further removed to the mainland, then my son wouldn't even get to know my own parents. And I think that's very important, and something that's very underestimated in Hawaii, getting to know your grandparents. And there's a balance there. You know, you don't want to overburden them and just have them babysit your kid all the time and raise the kid all the time, which I know does happen here. And so we're trying to find that balance of making sure that my son gets to be involved with his grandparents here, but not to like overburden them. In thinking about leaving, there are many reasons to pack it up and go. I mean, financially speaking, the cost of living is so much more expensive here in Hawaii compared to the mainland, especially in certain parts. It's like so much cheaper. The food is better, it's fresher, and it's just, there's a lot more financial opportunity. And of course, the housing, right? Like, I know that we could sell our place and move to the mainland and just straight up buy a house for cash with a lot of land, just, you know, 2 stories and a basement, a big yard, and that'd be it. It wouldn't even be close to what we could get here. And yet it all comes back to family. And maybe things will change if my parents aren't here or my brother moves away. You know, we could move away and there wouldn't be a lot necessarily to keep us here anymore. But I'd like to continue living in Hawaii, and I'd like to raise my son here because this is where I came from. we're connected to this place, not maybe in the same way that some Native Hawaiians are connected to the land or the Aina, but for me, this is where my family is from. My family, I found out, I don't know if you can see it back there, but they started out in Kaka'ako, and that's currently where we live. They were a part of the community years ago, before I was even here, and it's nice to know that my family helped to build the community that I'm currently living in. And so there's that connection, right? There's gonna be not just the familiarity of certain places, because things are actually changing, but it's more of a familiarity of, I can let my son know that, hey, this is the school that I went to. This is where I hung out, you know? This is like that restaurant that we used to go a lot, or here's where my grandparents used to live. And we can do that because we're here. And I don't know if my son's gonna be able to continue living here. Like once he gets older and grows up and has a family, I don't know if he'll be able to live here. And if he wants to choose to move away, that's fine. I think that's great. But I guess I don't want to be the one to take that choice away from him, because Hawaii is a really special place to live. And of course, the beautiful weather and the culture and all these wonderful things, the food, it adds to what makes Hawaii special. But I think it really comes down to one thing that makes it special, for me at least, and that's the connection to family. Because when you're from Hawaii, you grow up with family, whether it's blood or hanai. And it's like this innate closeness that we have. And ultimately, that's what I think makes all of this struggle, all the traffic, all the expensive food and high cost of living, worth it. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and aloha.